Welcome to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks, a show that provides extraordinary insights for product managers who want to go faster and farther in their product management careers.
Hello, this is JJ Rory, Vice President at Sequent Learning Networks. In our Masters of Product Management podcast, we tap into the experiences of people who work in and around product management to help you learn and grow in your product management career. Consumer subscription business models are sometimes quite difficult. Consumers, and we're all guilty of this, expect so much for free these days when it comes to content, technology, and online services, that it can be a steep mountain to climb for subscription products to become economically successful. The value must be proven initially in order for consumers to take that first step into paying for a product. But then we have to continue to show value for users to keep subscribing. This constant decision cycle requires an ongoing, validated value proposition, even more so than other types of products. I'm so excited and honored to have my guest today discuss the paradigms of consumer subscription products and how she and her teams have been able to turn these products into very successful businesses. Gyanda Sachdeva is Vice President of Product Management at LinkedIn, where she leads product management for LinkedIn Premium, Commerce, and Marketplace products. She is also the co-founder of LinkedIn's Women in Product, which spans product management, design, business development, and content. Gyanda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
So you've been with LinkedIn for almost 10 years, which in the tech world is about 100 years. So you must have seen a lot of transition and growth along the way. What has that been like?
So I've been at LinkedIn for almost 10 years. My 10-year anniversary is coming up in January, and I'm really looking forward to it now. I was afraid of the double-digit mark at a single company, but I think I've come to terms with it. But the good news is that it's been a really great learning experience. And even though I've been at the same company for such a long period of time, it doesn't feel that way. And I think in particular, in my case, that's because when I joined LinkedIn, it was before it went public. And so I kind of saw, the early days of right before when a company is starting to prepare to go public, what does it take to get there? How do you set the systems up? How do you set the teams up? The whole pre-IPO rush. And then I saw it go public, and then there was a whole hyper-growth phase of, scaling that I hadn't seen before in my career, and so that was very exciting. And then we got acquired by Microsoft, and I now have seen the post-acquisition world. So even though it's been the same brand technically, I internally I feel like I've worked at least 3 different companies: pre-IPO, post-IPO, and post-acquisition. And so I think all in all, just a wonderful learning experience. Couldn't be happier to be where I am today. But it's been 10 years.
That's amazing. I love that perspective. So one of the things that I love about you and your story is that you've been able to build multiple products from scratch and turn them into wildly successful, high-profile businesses. That's a difficult thing to do once, but you've been able to do it multiple times. What are some of the key learnings you've experienced along the way?
That's a great question. And maybe tying back to your previous question, one of the best things about being at LinkedIn was that LinkedIn has a variety of different businesses that we have. We have an ads business, we have a SaaS business for enterprise customers, we have an online consumer subscription business, we have a massive consumer product. So I think just overall, if someone just wanted to learn how to run different parts of a machinery and when it comes to product and business, LinkedIn is actually a wonderful platform for that. So I got really lucky with respect to the company. But I think to answer your question, I feel like understanding the customer value and recognizing the unique strength of the platform, both are very critical. And I'll give you examples. So back in the day when I started product, my start was in ads, and I built a number of foundational things in ads, like the ad serving engine, the beginning of an ads platform, the real-time bidding technology that back in the day was like brand new and now everyone does it, social advertising, which was also coming up at the time and everyone was kind of scared to try it, and then native ads, which is what you now know advertising as, where you see promoted content in your feeds. And so in all of these situations, it was very interesting for me to learn about what customers wanted and how they would ultimately derive value from any of these products. And also what was unique about LinkedIn to be able to offer any of these. And one in particular, our native ads product, which are the ads you see in the LinkedIn feed, that was in particular an interesting challenge because we were doing it at a time when we did not have any mobile monetization, and our mobile app was growing like crazy. In fact, our desktop to mobile transition was happening so fast that we thought that our revenues would never catch up because most of our revenues were desktop based. So it was kind of like an internal, a crisis moment that, hey, we need to figure out our mobile monetization strategy ASAP. And B2B advertisers, who are the primary users of LinkedIn's advertising products, they were not very familiar with both mobile ads or with bidding for ads. Like, this is not a thing they do. They don't bid for ads. They used to buy it on an impression basis. So introducing the auction model and launching ads for the first time in mobile, very interesting, very essential for LinkedIn's growth, but ultimately it came down to understanding where the B2B advertisers were. They were not as sophisticated as the B2C advertisers who are who had to adopt to what Facebook was already doing by that time. So just like a lot of understanding their needs and meeting them where they were. And that business is now more than $1 billion in revenue. It's the fastest growing business at the company, which is in a very exciting part of at least my personal career journey at LinkedIn, but also just seeing that work out for so many customers was exciting. And after that, I took over LinkedIn's consumer subscription business, which is a whole new learning experience. And I actually think a lot harder than building B2B enterprise products. Having built those, I actually did not have appreciation for how difficult the consumer paid product landscape is. And I think you said it in the opening as well. It's really hard to convince a consumer to pay for anything on the internet. And you have to really offer clear value, which in the consumer subscription sense has to be provided over a longer period of time as well. So that ongoing clear value is really hard to deliver.
Yes, very interesting. I agree with you. I think in some cases, business to consumer products may be easier, but in this case, I can definitely attest to the fact that it is difficult to get over that initial hurdle of consumer perception and consumer value. Right? Once you prove the value, then I think you're in a much better position. But that hurdle is so great initially that it's really critical for us as product managers to understand that from the beginning. So let's build on this a little bit. What are some other ways that you believe products that utilize a subscription pricing model are unique?
Yeah, I think a lot of it actually comes down to the consumer behavior. So if you think back in the day when, internet started, like really back in the day, but also when Google came to the picture, Google kind of set the foundation for what is free and what is not. And by bringing ads as the primary monetization vehicle for Google, every customer kind of walked into the internet and the content and the value they were getting from the digital world with the freedom and with the sense that a lot of this is going to be their right. They should be able to see this whole thing for free. And then you started seeing the switch to more quality control. So the perfect example is the publisher community. So publishers started with the ads model back in the day because that was the expectation. Internet is free, content is free, and you make money through advertising. And that was the easiest way to also get users, a large set of users. But now there's a shift towards paid content. Almost all publishers are moving in the direction of subscriptions. And quality has become a much bigger driving force than it was before. And so I think there is a lot of it is actually tied to consumer behavior and how much of it can you challenge, and what stage is your company or how big is your product and brand to go ahead and challenge that. I think if you take it to the nth degree, I'm convinced that Google's revenue mix over time is going to actually shift to their cloud business or the subscription side of the house versus advertising. But because it started the way it started, a lot of the after effects are still seen in the digital world. But I think outside of that, an engaged user base is actually pretty critical. And specifically if they're working on a very specific thing, like a specific need that they have. So the perfect example at LinkedIn is recruiting. As a recruiter, if you are on LinkedIn, you are looking for candidates to fill whatever roles you have at your organization. And that's a very specific need. And so the things that you need to do as a recruiter are actually very different from what anybody else using LinkedIn for professional networking, for seeking a job, etc. would need to do. So building a subscription model or a pricing model when there is an engaged user base like a recruiter who has a very strong need using a database of candidates, and with a very specific ongoing a set of needs that they will maintain, that combination is powerful. And so when you find that, I think it's important that when you move into or you consider a subscription pricing model, the second one is quality. So I think like now, talking about the consumer behavior a little bit, because the expectation is that everything is going to be free, now there's an opportunity to create a subscription pricing model for quality of that product, be it content, be it media, be it any other type of curated service. I think that all of that is now ready for a subscription model. But when you identify that specific need, I think considering a subscription model is probably the most important thing that you can do. At LinkedIn, we've done it for several use cases. So recruiting is one. Salespeople is another one. They have a very specific need of selling. And so there is a subscription SKU that was targeted to just salespeople. There's another one targeted to small business owners because they need to grow their business. That's their only, priority when they're on LinkedIn, and the tools and the workflows that we can build for them in that setup are pretty unique. And then their willingness to pay in that setup are pretty high. And then the last one is career development. So we have a SKU just focused on people who are in the job seeking or career development mindset. And one of the things that we offer in that SKU is learning content. And LinkedIn Learning, which we actually acquired from lynda.com, that entire library of content is highly curated. So if you wanted to learn how to use Excel, you could do that on YouTube, but you could then also, for free actually on YouTube, but you could also learn it from an expert on LinkedIn Learning. So that quality control has made it easy for us to charge it on a subscription basis versus offer it for free. So it really depends on the product and your user. But when you find somebody who's engaged and who has a very specific ongoing need, and if you're in a position to challenge this like consumer behavior, the traditional consumer behavior, subscription pricing model is kind of the way to go.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What's interesting is I believe, and I hadn't really thought about it in this way, but I do believe and agree with you that some of the large tech firms and consumer tech firms like LinkedIn and Google, maybe a Facebook, for example, can change consumer behavior. Or at least steer it in a certain way. And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. I just think it's part of how we as consumers now consume technology and services. And I think that you can steer more so than some of the smaller firms. It brought up an interesting story. When I was in grad school back in the early 2000s, I remember we were doing, honestly don't even remember the course or the class I was in, but we had to do presentations, and one of my classmates did a presentation on Google, and I had not heard of Google. And I remember him talking about how Google is going to change the world. And I thought, well, that's just silly. It's, I can find things on the internet. Okay, great. That's wonderful. And boy, was he right. And I was wrong. So, big firms who find a way to do what product management is all about, which is solve problems that customers and consumers need solved. And sometimes as consumers, we don't even know we have those problems, right? And so companies like LinkedIn and Google, for example, can do some interesting things. So thanks for sharing that. That's an interesting perspective. So kind of a little broader maybe in kind of the idea of scaling products the way that you have. Do you have one or two guiding principles that product managers and leaders should be aware of as they try to grow products to the scale that you've been able to grow yours to?
So I think I don't know if it's different when it comes to scaling alone, but I do think two things are very important in a product manager's life cycle as they are growing. So one is, I truly believe in the PM's responsibility to have very strong opinions that are loosely held. And that piece about staying open-minded and being humble it goes a long way in ensuring you build an enduring franchise. And I think that's because just over time, and if you do that, over 4 or 5 years, things change around you pretty quickly. And if you are in a position where you can move in a direction with whatever opinion you have about how a product should be or how consumers should use it in a certain way, but you're evolving it as you see things changing around you, I think that is the best recipe you can find to manage scale. And then the second thing is, the different stages of scale, they may require different tactics and also potentially different leaders. And knowing that is actually a pretty important piece. So, perfect examples on my team. I have a team that's focused purely on growing the subscription funnel. So imagine like someone is responsible for looking at how many people are signing up and what kind of backgrounds do they have, what kind of profiles do they have, are they signing up using the right products that we intended for them to sign up with, or did we get it wrong somewhere? The whole funnel, from the beginning till the end. And the kind of person who's needed to do that when we're starting out is very different from someone who we need at the $1 billion scale, because the funnel mechanics are entirely different, and which part of the funnel you look at becomes different. So if you have someone who's evolving with that process, that's great. But if you don't, then bringing someone else who can apply a different playbook is actually pretty helpful. And if you look at the subscription companies in the consumer space, Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, Apple Music, Dropbox, SiriusXM, like there's a whole variety of them. All of them have these massive teams that work on purely just the acquisition funnel. Some teams that work just on, the first 30-day experience of the customer. And then some teams that are working on figuring out the retention of that customer. How long will they stay and use it? So organizing your team in a certain way when you're at that scale can make all the difference. But all these digital subscription teams who are running large subscription products and businesses have evolved a ton over time. If you think back to the days when Amazon Prime started, the only thing it really had was free shipping. And today, if you try to find out what Amazon Prime has, it's like, first of all, like hard to find, but there's like 20 things in it. And so you join for reason 1, but you stay for reason 2 and 3 and 4. And that bundle has become a really important, of course, part of Amazon, but also part of the customer's value chain. Like I bought it for free shipping, but I enjoy the Prime Video piece a lot, or I enjoy the storage piece a lot. And so I think over time you have to figure out what users are using. Video was not a thing many years ago, and now it is. And so Amazon has evolved very quickly to make it part of the bundle. And so I think those kinds of changes along the way are necessary to hit scale. And as you are evolving that strategy, the team that's working with you to get to that point, be it pricing, be it signups, be it retention, that team needs to evolve as well.
Yeah, what I kind of consider customer centricity, right, is so core to everything. And as you've mentioned, I loved how you said basically assess your talent ongoing, because everyone who's good at the beginning of a project and a product growth cycle is not going to be the right people at the end. And so I think that's important for leaders and product managers from a customer perspective, is really understanding that fact that some groups of customers will value certain features that others don't value, but those other groups will value another set. So for example, LinkedIn Premium, I love, and I value it for certain features, and some colleagues of mine that also use it and love it, they've told me they like it for other things. So we as product managers have to understand that and kind of always be looking at what feature and bundle set can bring in the most impact. So I completely agree with you there. Just to follow up on this, or maybe add anything to it from a true customer centricity, and that's kind of how I coin the fact that always keeping that consumer and that customer at the forefront of everything we do is in product management. Are there any other examples you'd like to share on how maybe you've incorporated deep customer centricity into your products?
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, needless to say, user research is a pretty big part of the product development process, at least here at LinkedIn, and I know at many companies, at least in the tech world. And understanding that member mindset as deeply as you can go a long way, especially what the intent is and what is the barrier to getting that value. Because sometimes, like they want to do X, and you know how they can do X, but clearly they're running into Y and Z that you may not have seen. And it could be as simple as, hey, I'm a recruiter and I am in this part of the world. The problem I'm having is that your app can't load on the network that I have. Like, the barrier is the network, not so much what your app offers. So you go ahead and build a light version of your app so that it can load on the network. So all these things need to be well understood for the target audience that you're going after. And then I'd also say that, and I read this somewhere, but I found it so powerful, that there's a difference between what customers want to get done and how they want to feel. And I think we often get the first one right, which is like, hey, this is their objective, that they want to finish task one. And we often forget in the process of doing that how they actually want to feel while doing it. So, for instance, I'm really passionate about small business owners. I think I grew up in a small business owner family, and I feel like there's so much we can do to bring small businesses into the digital world, and we haven't done a good job of it. But a small business owner wants to grow her business and find leads. But even more importantly, while she's doing that, she wants to feel like she's not alone, that there is a community that's trying to do the same thing or is standing by her. And I think there's that feeling of, I want to feel like the hero that I am, is extremely important as we are designing the products that all of us do. So getting to that second level of understanding on how your users want to feel is very important. And so one of the things I did back in the day, and I really should get back to doing it someday, is talking to the customers yourself. Like, most companies have big user research teams, and you join those user research projects, and you listen to the customer. You listen to a user researcher talking to your customer, and that's often how PMs these days get to know what they need to build, at least in bigger companies. I actually highly recommend PMs to talk to the customers themselves as often as they can. So many years ago, I used to spend at least an hour calling 1 to 2 customers on Fridays. And over time, the planning of this took too long, so I wasn't able to keep it up. But those calls were powerful for 2 reasons. One was very rarely, but sometimes I would learn something new, a new insight, a new bug. But that was rare because you've seen it so many times. It's often like the same thing said 100 times. But very regularly, I'd be reminded of how much work needs to be done. And that helped me to not get complacent. And what usually ended up happening was, right after those calls, I'd be all fired up. I'd send off a few emails on Friday afternoon, that, hey guys, like, I just spoke to Melissa B, and like, she's running into this problem. That's crazy. Like, I thought we were going to fix it that other way, but clearly it's not working. So let's find a new way, which kind of kept the momentum going through the weekend. And on Mondays, we were always busy as a result of those Friday emails. So I think you have to find your own rhythm on how you do it, but I don't know if there's anything you can do that can be better than talking to 1 or 2 customers directly on a frequent enough basis, and then understanding that second level of need. That what is it? How does using this product make you feel? Why do you prefer this over the other? And just having that second degree of understanding can change how you delight them, and then that can change almost everything that comes after.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I couldn't agree more with you. I often tell product managers that I'm working with and talking to not to outsource the customer feedback, right? And I mean that by, their internal partners whose job it is to talk to consumers and customers. And I don't mean to downplay that. I think consumer research and market research groups are incredibly important, and our sales partners and account management partners are incredibly important. But as a product manager, it's so critical to hear it yourself, to observe the feedback from your own ears and eyes, and really grab that feedback from the consumer yourself. There's always that little bit of translation that happens if you're talking to an internal partner. Keep doing that, right? Keep going to your market research groups. Keep talking to sales. Keep talking to all of the folks who also talk to consumers, but do it yourself as well. So I couldn't agree more. Great advice. So just to wrap up, any final words of wisdom for product managers and leaders out there who may be struggling a bit to build and grow subscription-based products?
Yeah, I mean, I think like just asking in a subscription-based product, asking yourself, is your subscription a single feature or a bundle of features is probably the first question. I advise a couple of companies that are building subscription products, and oftentimes this simple question has a very complicated answer. So knowing that alone can change sort of your pricing strategy, can change your product strategy. And I think that's critical. And then if your subscription is a bundle, does your subscription bundle have a central hero character? We were talking about the Amazon Prime use case where their hero is the free shipping. And back in the day, I used to give probably an unhealthy example, but the McDonald's, I think it was a $1 menu, but their hero was the burger, and the fries were just like nice to have. Nobody bought the meal for just the fries. And so you need to know what your central meal is and what your fries are. And over time, that answer may change for different audiences, and that's okay. But like knowing that will help you understand what is the core and where you need to invest in terms of value delivery, and where you need to still build over time. I mean, this is kind of what Amazon did, which is, they kept strengthening their free shipping logistics while they were building out their Prime Video and 100 other features that they have within Amazon Prime. But now they're both at par. So that's amazing. And I think if you can get to that point, I'm sure you'll have very different problems to chase, not how to grow or scale your business. And the second thing I'd say to a subscription a product manager is to pay attention to loyalty metrics, because in a subscription business, you can sometimes lose sight of the fact that it's not just about signing more and more people up into your subscription product. It's actually, the most important thing is actually giving them value for a long period of time, because your LTV is determined, lifetime value is determined by how long your customers stay or how often they come back. And if you observe patterns that can help you determine why they come back, why they churn, when they churn, that can change or determine sometimes your strategy. So I think it's critical that you don't, it's not a one-time thing with signing up a customer with a subscription business. It's actually, fortunately or unfortunately, an ongoing thing. So you kind of have to keep track of when, how, and where their engagement patterns are changing, and how that should change your strategy going forward.
An amazing discussion today. It's so great to hear from someone who's been able to find the magic numerous times and build very successful product lines. Thank you so much, Gyanda Sachdeva, for sharing your experience and words of wisdom with us. I certainly learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience did as well. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us on Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. I am JJ Rory, and I look forward to speaking with you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Masters of Product Management, powered by Sequent Learning Networks. If you'd like to take your career to the next level with additional tools, training, coaching, and books, be sure to visit Sequent Learning Networks at sequentlearning.com.